With the president now in Saudi Arabia recuperating and an interim leader, the vice president, in place, there's still a lot of concern of a power vacuum in the country. We've got tribal leaders, tribal groups saying that they want some element of power, that at least trying to bring down or calm the violent protests that have been taking place right now. There is a massive power vacuum, and there have been a lot of concerns when you look at problems like Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula.
Well, yes, but however, we have seen that since at least Friday, there's been a marked reduction on violence against protesters. So we haven't actually seen any protesters being fired at the way that we have been seeing since February of this year. What we have been seeing is armed clashes between what is said to be government forces allied to the president and tribal leaders who are trying to vacate some of the areas where the security forces have taken power of. So that is at the moment, actually, we have seen this reduction in the violence in relation to the protesters.
So from your perspective, from Amnesty International's perspective, are you saying that basically without the president there is less violence, and now that people are somewhat, and I use this term loosely, safer?
Well, in terms of the peaceful protesters, the generally peaceful protests, yes, we have been seeing that. However, there is a problem in relation to the armed situation in terms of the clashes, and that has been a lot of it humanitarian, because we have seen scores of families fleeing Zanzibar, fleeing Taiz, fleeing Sana'a as well, and that has created a lot of pressure on the already strained humanitarian situation in the country in terms of food prices, fuel, etc.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is, I think, a real concern. This is a country that is a very poor country, especially even though it is the 32nd largest oil exporter in the world. It is the 16th largest seller of liquefied natural gas. Even though the revenues that will be coming from that, it is still an extremely poor country. People don't have enough water, they don't have enough food, and when we're talking about human rights in that country, give us an idea of what exactly we're seeing.
Well, this is actually part of the problem, is that we have seen that people fled to their villages, so we're not able to find out exactly what they're suffering from, but we know the situation has already been dire prior to this, so we can only imagine that the situation has deteriorated further. However, in relation to people who fled from Zanzibar into Aden, we know that local activists, IGOs, international organizations have been trying to step in to help them, and they're living in schools, for example, in big numbers of people, and they cannot be sustained within the current setup. So
how worrying is the Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula situation for perhaps even NGOs and groups such as yours working within the country to try and help people?
Well, at the moment, the issue of Al-Qaeda is not really clear. Where are they? What are the concerns? Has there been any attempt to arrest people rather than kill them, etc.? So there has been some concerns regarding government attempts to fire and kill people without actually seeking to attempting to arrest them first. And we see this as part of the problem, is that the government is not choosing the human rights aspect of having to quell the Al-Qaeda, which is seeking to actually arrest them first. So that is part of the problem that we are trying to monitor. But again, you have areas that are virtually you're not able to reach. We've been in Yemen last year, and there are certain areas that the government told us are completely out of bounds. So that is part of the difficulty there. And this is a big challenge, obviously, for the current government. What we want the current government to do is to try to ensure that in trying to ensuring security in the country, they should do that within the human rights framework.